by our counseling team. So I'm going to let the rest of the counselors introduce themselves.
Hi, I am Mrs. Goldstein. I'm counselor for students and families, last names H through O, and we're so glad you're here today.
And I'm Mrs. Dash. I'm one of the counselors at IMS as well, and I work with students and families at the end of the alphabet, last names P through Z.
Yep, I hear you on mute.
There we go. I'm Mr. Brown, and I am the Mercer Island Youth and Family Services Counselor. And I'm at IMS along with Audrey Phillips, who's a master's level intern that some of you may know from groups we do. And we're really excited to be part of this. Ms. Phillips has classes on Wednesdays because she's a student too and not able to be here, but she's thinking about you. And if you need support, she's another person you can turn to.
So sorry about that. I was sharing my screen and I clicked on something and I went to the wrong slide. So I am going to get back to the right slide before I share my screen again. There we go. And so before I introduce this seminar, I want to get to our slides. There we go. Sorry about that. All right, so you guys can see that this seminar is called Building Resilience and Coping Skills. And in especially a very difficult, almost like year and a half since our pandemic hit, I imagine you've experienced all different levels of stress and different experiences. But we do have stress in our everyday life, even if we're not in the middle of a pandemic. And so this seminar, we hope, is really helpful for you just moving forward in the today and in the rest of your life as you begin your journey into adulthood. So I think Miss Dash is the next person up.
For sure. Okay, so I do believe that the term stress is probably something familiar that everybody can relate to, but it was actually helpful for me to look up the definition. And so we'll start out by just reviewing that stress is our body's response to pressure. And it's often triggered when we experience something new or unexpected that might threaten our sense of self, and when we feel like we have little control over a situation. So I'm just curious to get us kind of going and a little bit of engagement this morning. What are some things that are causing you stress currently? And we'd like you to put something in the chat just to get us thinking about some real life examples of stress. I put my example. I don't know if you guys are familiar with my voice, but it's a little raspy today because I woke up not feeling my best. And, in this day and age, that means not only do I not feel well, but now I have to go get a COVID test. I have to stay home from work. And, it's just this whole trigger effect that, feels a bit overwhelming in the moment. But yeah, for sure, there's some other things that I think we can all relate to is maybe having a sick pet at home, feeling like you have a lot of homework. Tests are for sure a trigger that can be very stressful. Having to clean when you don't want to, and just simply not having enough time to do all the things that you want to do. Stress is a very natural part of life, and no one gets out without stress. That's just not realistic. And so today we want to focus on good stress versus unhealthy stress. And essentially, good stress is something that can be beneficial and motivating to get you moving in the right direction and figuring out how to problem solve in incremental milestones, so to speak. But when we don't deal with our stress, if we bottle it up inside and we just let things kind of pile up without actually coping, stress can be pretty unhealthy, and it can lead to some problems in life. So our hope and goal today is that you understand the difference between stress that's natural and learn some skills for how to deal so that it never gets to a place that it feels unhealthy. In the next slide, we're going to watch a quick video. And this is about something called the stress bucket. Ms. Klein, can you switch? We all have stress, as mentioned. And so there's a really famous explanation of how to visualize stress, and that's with a bucket. And actually, I'll just let the video run because I think it does a better job explaining. It's just about a minute.
The idea of the stress bucket has been around in psychology for some time. Here is the story of the stress bucket. We're all born being a different sized bucket. The bucket is our capacity to cope with stressful life events. There's not much you can do about what sized bucket you are. We all live under leaky stress taps. The water that drips into the bucket represents our stressful life events. Many stressful life events are not within our control. All of our buckets have drain holes. This is good, as they release the stress we experience. If we have good strategies for releasing stress, our buckets won't overflow. But sometimes our coping strategies can't keep up with the stress we are living under. And sometimes we abandon our coping strategies when we need them the most, such as cancelling social events because we're feeling too busy and stressed at work. A full and overflowing bucket is where stress has reached unhelpful levels and mental health conditions may emerge. A bucket where the stress remains safely inside is one where stress is in check and is likely helping with productivity.
So our goal today for this seminar is to help you figure out how to manage your stress bucket in a healthy way.
Sorry, let me get to present. Goodness gracious, sorry guys. There we go. Is it on present? It doesn't look like it. Okay, sorry, it didn't look like it to me.
That's okay. Don't stress it, Miss Klein. You're doing great.
Thank you. Thank you for telling me not to stress. All right.
There we go. So, you know, and I want to note that May is Mental Health Awareness Month. I don't think any of us said that. And the theme this year is Tools to Thrive. And really, when we take care of our mental health, we're taking care of our whole self and able to really approach challenging situations in a good way, meaning we can make good choices and not make choices because we're all stressed out. Sometimes we're act on our urges. So one way to think about how we're feeling emotionally is this idea of an emotional thermometer. And imagine that your emotional thermometer, just like those bucket sizes, go all different for all of us, but they go from 0 being really calm. And this thermometer actually goes to 110. So all the way to 110, somebody pointed that out to me the other day, because we always think about 0 to 100, but this goes 0 to 110. So what we like to think about is when you're getting close to 65, that's a time to start doing some coping skills. And we're going to be shifting to talking about coping skills because we don't want to get to a place where we're potentially creating a crisis because we're so stressed out that something we could have dealt with if we were calm turns into a major crisis. And again, that 65, just like those bucket sizes are different, is going to be different for everybody. I think I need to start using my coping skills when I get to about a 50. I'm halfway there. I better start taking a breath or doing something, because for me, when I get to 65 or 70, bam, I'm at 80 or 90. So I need to start earlier, but it's different for everybody. So it's really important that we all learn, where do we need to put our coping skills in place? And the sooner we do it, the better choices we can make, because we're not acting on those stress urges, fight or flight, or faint or freeze, but we're using our cortex and making good choices.
So now that we've talked about how stress is universal, we're going to talk about coping skills. And maybe some of you are wondering, well, what is a coping skill? A coping skill is a strategy or a skill that you are using to deal with a stressful situation to help lower your stress level. And so if you imagine that bucket, it was kind of what helps release it out the bottom. And they're just really tools and techniques, and they're individual. What works for one person might not work for another. And so it's really about learning yourself and what helps you in stressful situations. What is your toolbox that you can use? And so we'll go over lots of different ideas, and you'll really have to think about and maybe try some and see which ones work best for you. They are universal. We all use them. Adults use them. Mr. Brown was just talking about how he knows himself, and when he gets to about 50, he knows he needs to start using them. I use them. We all do. And so when you use it will really depend on you as an individual and, kind of where your point is at which you know that I really need to take a break or do whatever it is to help yourself feel better. And so we all go through hard times, and we just need to learn when is a time we need to implement some of those coping skills to help ourselves feel better.
Okay, so our strategies overview. So what we're going to cover in the rest of this seminar to help you kind of start thinking about different ways to use coping or different types of coping skills to alleviate some of that stress. And so I just want to mention that sometimes we wish there was like a magic wand to just like erase that stress, and that when we talk, I find sometimes when I'm talking to students, they're like, well, I've tried that and it didn't work, and they only tried it once. And I really think that sometimes it feels like it's too simple. Like when we talk about taking really deep breaths, it's like, well, that's not going to work. That's too simple. But the thing about coping skills is I think that they're somewhat simple, but still hard to do and hard to remember to do and hard to remember to practice. And so just like Ms. Goldstein was saying, it's really important to figure out what's going to work for you by trying different things. So some of the strategies that we're going to go over in the next few minutes is the mindful activities. Overcoming negative thoughts, which can really bring us down especially when we're really stressed out. If we continue with those negative thoughts, we're just ramping up on that thermometer more and more. So positive self-talk is actually a really, really effective strategy to at least bring yourself to like baseline, and then to be able to implement even more coping skills. And then focusing on your sources of strength and gratitude, which Ms. Dash and Mr. Brown will talk about, support networks, which are so important, and some additional ideas.
So here's some 5 different mindfulness activities that you can do at school or anywhere really, in the car, before a game, before a performance. And I like to think about mindfulness, a very simple definition. I'm not worried about what happened in the past. I'm not regretting things or upset about what already happened. I'm not worried about what's going to happen in the future or thinking what's going to happen when I take a test or anything else. But I'm thinking about how am I feeling right now? And I'm aware of my thoughts and my emotions. So these activities are, the first one is stop. We're going to go into a little bit, a 5 count breath. And that's when you breathe in for 5 and out for 5, and do that silently in your head. And we're going to practice a couple of these. Check your breath. And that's just a breath in and thinking to yourself, how am I feeling right now? And oftentimes I'll talk to students about trying to figure out what's their first feeling. You might be mad, but when you think about what's your first feeling, it might be, I'm disappointed, I'm frustrated, I'm confused. And getting to that first feeling will help that cortex wake up and again, not have the bottom part of your brain, fight or flight, taken over. We don't want that fight or flight to hijack our thinking part of our brain. A mindful moment, and that's really pausing, taking a breath. Think about, how do I feel? Where am I feeling stress? Or where am I feeling anxiety or worry or sadness? Is it in my stomach, my chest? Where am I feeling that? And just allowing yourself to have that sadness, worry, whatever it is, and allowing it to pass. We talk about emotions being like a wave. They come, they peak, and then they pass through us. And the last one here is mindful moments. And that's really taking some time, planning it part of your day where you're going to, maybe it's first thing when you wake up in the morning, maybe it's when you get home from school, but it's part of the practice. And that's what you need to do with this. For it to be effective, you need to practice it. Just a couple minutes a day can make a big difference. We can go to the next slide, please. So this is an example of mindfulness skill, stop, and really outlining what you do or what you would do. And the first thing for S is stop what you're doing. So you're feeling worried, you're feeling anxious, you're incredibly frustrated because you can't figure out where to start a writing assignment or figure out a math problem. It's time to take a break. When you feel your emotional thermometer, for me about 50, I'm wondering where it is for you. Think a minute, where is the place where you need to start using your coping skills? And maybe everybody could put that in the chat. Where do you think you need to start using your coping skills? From 0 to 110, where would it be for you? The T is for take a breath, breathe normally, naturally. You don't have to hold your fingers like this and sing a mantra or hum or anything, but it's where you just take normal breaths. If you can, follow your breath in through your nose, out through your mouth, feel it coming in, observe your thoughts, think about what am I feeling now? What am I thinking? And then figure out what is going to help you in the moment. Maybe it's taking a break from homework. Maybe it's taking a walk. It's definitely not getting in an argument with your brother or sister or your parents or a friend, but it's taking a break and doing something that'll help you lower your emotional thermometer. And here we go. Yeah, 70, 60. Okay, well, Miss Klein, Miss Dash, you guys all know. I'm wondering what other people think. Put in the chat, where would you start using your coping skills? Between 0 and 110.
I got a direct message of maybe about 55.
Awesome.
From
70, 50. Right. We all have different size buckets, and it's really knowing who we are and when we start reacting to stuff. And I really challenge you to keep track of that. And it can be even fun stuff, like you're getting super excited because your family's finally going to go someplace and do something fun. You know, maybe you're going on vacation. Sometimes I forget stuff. I get so excited. I can't find the car keys, right? So that's another time I use a coping skill to just slow down. I use one mindfully, do things one thing at a time. All right, so that's stop. I think we're going to get a chance to practice on the next slide. Yes, so these are examples of apps that you have access to in self-service through your iPad. Headspace, I know some people on this call even use that. Stop, breathe, think, that's another one, or it might say Calm, depending on the version you have. I like that one because it has us check in. How do we feel in our body? What emotions do we have? And if you create an account, it'll keep track of your emotions and physical well-being over time. But they all have different meditations on there that you can practice with, from a minute or so to longer. And then Virtual Hope Box. Virtual Hope Box also has things that we can use to distract us, like games, like it'll take if you put some photos in there, it'll juggle up the photo. Just, you know, I use solitaire. People use different things. Distracting ourselves is one way, again, to get that top part of our brain working that does all the good thinking. So we're going to do a 1-minute box breathing. And it's actually want you to imagine a box. And in this video, it'll show the box and just follow the instructions. But it's another way to distract ourselves, focus on being in the present, not worried about the past, something that didn't go well, not all anxious about what's coming, but be in the present. And we can go ahead and play that video.
Sorry, it's just a little easier for me to get there once I stop sharing.
No worries, but you can see if you practice that it really distracts you. You really have to focus on your breathing, to breathe in, to hold for 4, breathe out for 4, hold for 4, breathe in for 4. So doing that kind of exercise, that's just one example of a bunch of different ones that can really help get you from that 65, 70, wherever it is, back down to a calm place where you're not going to act on your emotional urges and you're going to take care of yourself and make good choices.
Okay, so for the next activity, I'm hoping everyone has a piece of paper and a pen or a pencil nearby, because we're gonna write stuff down. So we'll just give you a few seconds to gather something to write with and something to write on. And what we're gonna do is, Ms. Klein was talking about negative self-talk. And so we're gonna start a timer for 30 seconds. And what we want you to do is think of all those things that you might say to yourself that are not super helpful, not very positive, and just write down as many as you can think of in 30 seconds. And then we're gonna pause and do the second part of the activity.
Do you want me to start the timer?
Yes, please.
All right.
Okay. Okay, so 30 seconds is up. That's not a lot of time. So next we're going to redo that, only this time so put a line on your page. This time I'm going to ask you to write down all the positive things you feel and think about yourself. Maybe you hear other people say about you, and just make a list of those things. And we'll do the same amount of time, 30 seconds. So, start.
Sorry.
Okay. So now we're going to ask you to count up how many of the negative, not so nice things you were able to write down in 30 seconds, and just ask everyone to go ahead and put that into the chat, not the actual things you say, but the number of things you wrote down. So count up how many you had and then put that into the chat. So we got 5, 6, 10, 5, 7. Okay. And now we're going to count up how many positive things did you write down in that 30 seconds, and count those up. And again, not writing the specific things, just the number of things you wrote down, and put that in the chat. We got 5, 3, 3.
Got a 3 in direct message.
7, 5. So just taking a moment to kind of reflect on those numbers and the differences, and how it felt for you. Was it easier to write down the negative things versus the positive? I'm tending to see that the numbers dropped when we asked you to write down positive things. And that seems to be true for a lot of people, that we have a harder time saying those positive things to ourselves. The negative kind of come easily to us. And so thinking about how we can start to undo that and undo some of those negative things we say to ourselves, because they really do not help stress, and they actually get in our way when we're trying to overcome stress, as if we let those negative thoughts flood in. And so we need to start working on replacing them with positive and making it easier to say those positive things to ourselves. And that takes practice. So on the next slide. Did it. Good job. So kind of what do we need to do about overcoming those negative thoughts? And so the first one here is choosing to wake up on the right side of the bed every morning. And that can be as simple as like when you wake up in the morning, saying something to yourself like it's a fresh new day. I'm going to give it my best today. Kind of not engaging with the negative thoughts that might come into your mind about not wanting to get out of bed. The next one is ridding your life of people and activities that bring negativity into your life. And this is really important because so much of our happiness is who we surround ourselves with. And so really making decisions to be around people that make you feel good. People who, when you leave the situation, you feel better, not worse. And so thinking about the friendships that you have and the people you surround yourself with, and really being mindful of that. The next one is taking care of yourself, eating well, getting enough sleep and exercise. And especially the sleep one can be really hard at this age because many of you aren't tired at night. And then we ask you to get up early for Wednesday seminars or for school. And so it can be hard to get enough sleep. And so really trying to listen to your body when you're tired, go to sleep, and eating well, getting some physical activity, especially right now while we're spending a lot of time on the computer, on a screen, taking those breaks, getting outside, getting fresh air, getting your body moving is so important. The next one is keep a collection of motivational quotes and sayings. And that might sound a little funny, but it really can help. And there's been studies about having a positive mantra. So like something that you say to yourself, like this too shall pass, or I can do this. Just simple little things that you say to yourself in those moments that are hard. So finding something that really makes you feel better to say to yourself, and it can be the same thing over and over again. Take time to participate in positive activities that you enjoy. And so I know sometimes I have students come to me and they're like, well, I really enjoy computer games. And I think, all things in moderation. If you're connecting with other people and that's what you enjoy, that's great. And, really figuring out what makes you feel good and doing that. Doing something nice for someone else. Sometimes when we take it away from ourselves and always concentrating on what we're thinking and feeling, it can be really helpful to turn it outward and do something nice for someone else. That can be as simple as telling someone that you appreciate them, or leaving them a nice note, or volunteering your time if that's something you can do. It really, really boosts ourselves and gives us something good to feel good about ourselves with too. And you're making someone else feel good. Humor, watching funny movie, reading jokes, acting silly. Laughter is so therapeutic. So whatever it is that makes you laugh, definitely those are great things to do. Listening to upbeat music. So this is a big one for me personally. If I'm in a funk, I just turn on something happy and upbeat, and it really makes a huge difference. So figuring out what kind of music really lifts your spirits. Being flexible. And this kind of goes to the idea that we're all going to have downtime. We're all going to have difficult moments, and just telling yourself like, this will pass. I can get through this. And it might not always go the way I want it to go. Sometimes I have an expectation that it will go really well, and it doesn't. And that's hard, but just realizing that it's okay for things to not always go the way we want them to. And focusing on the success and learning from your failures. We all make mistakes, and there's so much learning and growth that happens in those mistakes, and giving yourself grace and understanding that those mistakes can be really good learning opportunities, and they don't have to be a negative thing all the time.
Okay, so another really effective strategy is something called positive self-talk. And, this kind of ties back to the list that we made. Sometimes we tell ourselves stories in our brains, in our minds, and that makes us believe a certain thing. But it's really something that you can, in fact, control the way that you view the world and how you think about yourself. And so, in going back to that negative list that you made about yourself, the things that come to mind, you can easily replace those negative thoughts with positive ones. In the counseling world, there's something called thought stopping. And I've worked with a number of students where you could even take a physical list of things that you believe about yourself on the one side and replace it with a different positive thought. And so, it's really just training your brain to believe and treat yourself with kindness, to believe that you can do it. And I have two little kids at home, so I always make this connection. But if you guys remember being really little and reading the book, The Little Engine That Could, that little engine is trying to climb up a hill and he's saying, I think I can, I think I can. But as soon as he starts to really believe, I know I can, then he in fact gets up to the top of the hill. So if we can talk to ourselves in a way that makes us believe in the positive, it can really change our outlook on stress and coping, in the sense that we can believe that we can do it. You can believe that you have it under control. And so the more you can train the way you think in the kindness you treat yourself with, the more believable it becomes.
Okay, so positive self-talk and overcoming negative thoughts. And then these are all different pieces to building resilience as well. So that's why the seminar was called Build Resilience and Coping Skills. So we're talking about all these different types of coping skills that eventually build our resilience. And we need to use different coping skills at different times, or a bunch of different coping skills all at once, so that if the stress is at well, I don't want to go to 100 because that's a little bit of crisis, but even if it's at crisis, we use all these different pieces. And one of the most important pieces is your support network and figuring out who's in your support network. And especially in middle school, it's really developmentally appropriate, meaning all of you guys are seeking independence. And that's really okay and expected, but sometimes it can be a roadblock for you, because some students get really stubborn and it's like, I don't want to ask for help. And if you just reached out for help, you could probably decrease your stress a little bit. So figuring out who's in that network. Is it friends? Is it parents? So sometimes people feel like their friends are their bigger support network at this age, or their parents are still a really amazing support system for them. Other family members, teachers, counselors, coaches, spiritual leaders, but figuring out who do you go to at different times when you're experiencing maybe high levels of stress, and who's going to kind of help you in that moment. So like, if you're worried about a test and and it's a couple of days before the test, maybe your teacher is the best one to go to, during office hours, or, someday when we get back to being in person, like scheduling an appointment before or after school, that might be the person that you need to go to alleviate that stress about that test. Or maybe a family member is able to help you with that test. Or if you're having a conflict with a friend, who's going to help you through that stressor? Is it one of your counselors at school, or is it a parent? So support networks are super, super important. And honestly, we can't get through the hard times. Usually we can't get through the hard times without somebody supporting us. I think it's Mr. Brown and Miss Dash here.
So Mrs. Dash and I are the co-advisors for the Sources of Strength group. And we really want people to think about, well, one, our group meets today at 1 o'clock, and everyone's welcome to join if you're interested. And I think you can find it on the activities page. Is that right, Mrs. Dash?
Yeah, there's also a link every Wednesday on Schoology.
Awesome. So Sources of Strength really helps us think about, what are our sources of strength? Where do we get our strength from? Because sometimes we need to draw on different things to help us get through life's challenges, right? So you can see it's a wheel that has all these components, 8 different components. And they include, I'm going to go over the ones on the left side of the screen: mental health, having access to things like this, today's seminar, and trying different activities, different mindfulness activities, thinking about things in a positive way, not letting negative thoughts take over, having access to incredible counselors like the other 3 people on this screen and Miss Phillips, and I get to follow up with them, but being able to talk to someone if you're having a challenge and try to figure out what you need to get the support that would help you. And then medical access, being able to see a pediatrician, getting support if you're sick, if you hurt yourself in some way, being able to get that help. Spirituality, and a lot of times people question, what does that mean? Do I have to believe in a certain religion? And the answer is no. But it's really a sense of being connected to other people, being connected to nature. And I'm guessing that many of you have had those experiences. You see a beautiful sunset or a sunrise, or sometimes you take a look at Lake Washington. On my way to work, we drive over the lake, and I think, wow, what a gorgeous morning. I'm looking at Mount Rainier, and I'm just feeling so good about going to school, about my life, my family. And that's a sense of spirit that's in all of us. So having connections to the things that we appreciate in life, so important. And that really connects to this next one, generosity. Because all this research shows when we give back to others, we get something for ourselves. So having a way to give back. And it doesn't have to be going to Food Lifeline and helping prepare food, which I've done before for food banks. It could be making breakfast for your family, helping put away the groceries, doing things around the house, vacuuming. I'm sure whoever's jobs those are would really appreciate it if you jumped in and helped. So we can be generous in all kinds of ways. I had a student the other day telling me he was mowing the neighbor's yard, and they really appreciated that they were doing that. So small acts of kindness not only do something for others, but they enrich us and make us feel stronger too.
And I think this past year, maybe more than ever, we've spent a lot of time with our families at home. And so hopefully that has strengthened the bonds of connection among your family members. And so, when times are hard and we're thinking about trying to cope, like it's totally appropriate and encouraged that you rely on your family for help and support. Additionally, and Ms. Klein made mention of this, but it's developmentally appropriate for middle schoolers to, start to rely on friends a whole lot more. So branching out and confiding in friends, leaning on friends, asking for help, or just asking for someone to lend an ear, and frankly, being on the reverse side of that and being a good friend. Those are all things that can really help in terms of coping. Having mentors, it's, really kind of just going back to that supportive network slide that we just had. Mentors are people that you look up to, people who you kind of put, in a, not on a metaphorical pedestal, where you might look up to them and you see behaviors in somebody older than you that you think are things that you want for yourself as you grow older and become an adult. And so it's important that you know that mentors are leading by example, and they're people that you can rely on. And lastly, it's so important that you're getting exercise and physical outlet. But there's so many different healthy activities that you can do that really help, bring endorphins back into the picture. They help you burn off steam if you're feeling super stressed. And furthermore, I think healthy activities really help forge connections. And ultimately, when you're having a hard time, it's good to have a network of people who are paying attention to you, and they're, more likely to notice if things are a little bit off kilter. They might be able to step in and really be a support. So get yourself involved in doing activities and things that you enjoy, and that healthy activity will create a network of supportive people.
So we wanted to give you a whole bunch of different things you can look through and kind of see whether or not these are coping strategies that may or may not work for you. And maybe look through the list and pick a few that you're willing to try, because like Ms. Klein said, sometimes it takes doing it several times. These all take practice, and really figuring out what does work well for you. Are you someone that chewing gum helps? Does dancing make you feel better when you're in a hard spot? Thinking of a pet, or even going and getting your pet and cuddling up with them. And so take a moment to kind of look through the list. We've given you lots of different strategies. Here are some more, some are repeat, but just really thinking about what are some strategies that you are willing to try, and maybe you put it to the test this next week when there is a stressful event that you're trying to cope with.
Should I move to the last slide, or? Okay, so like Ms. Goldstein said, hopefully you picked one of these to try over the next week, or one that you know already works, and just remembering to use it. Sometimes that's the key as well, is like, whoa, super stressed, I should probably go for a run. I know Mustache likes to go for a run. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Although I will say, when I do kind of force myself to go for that run or go outside, it pretty much, there's never a time I regret that choice. So to wrap up our seminar, U plus stress equals no problem. And the reason we say that is because if you really do practice different coping skills, all the different things that we talked about, you can continue to build your resilience muscle. Sometimes people think that that you can't build resilience, that people are just kind of born with that whatever level of resilience they have, and there's no way to change that. But actually, research shows that if you practice all these different strategies, using your support network, positive self-talk, taking a run, all those different things, that you can start to build resilience. And building resilience means being able to bounce back from hard times. And so, like we've said throughout this seminar, we're always going to run into different roadblocks. Our stress levels are going to be at different levels at different times in our lives, and we all experience stress differently. But I think it's really, really important to remember that stress can be manageable. And that doesn't mean that sometimes it gets so overwhelming that you're like, whoa, I can't do this. And that's really when you reach out for different support networks for help. Maybe you will need help in that crisis moment to figure out which coping skills to use. But we hope that you took away some different strategies, ideas, knowledge to build your resilience and coping skills. And we thank you for being here so early in the morning on a Recharge Wednesday. Anybody else have any